August is a month full of powerful history, moments of protest, progress, and pain.
You place it in the ballot box.
August 4th, 1964. The bodies of civil rights workers Andrew Goodman, Michael Schwerner, and James Chaney were found buried in Mississippi. The college students had been missing for 44 days. They'd spent the summer registering Black Americans to vote.
You see, I know what's going to happen. I feel it deep in my heart when they find the people who killed those guys in Neshoba County.
A Ku Klux Klan mob, including members of the local police and sheriff's offices, had murdered the young men to try to keep Black people from voting.
Hold your heads up. We want our freedom now.
One year later, following months of protests and a bloody Sunday, landmark progress.
This act flows from a clear and simple wrong. Millions of Americans are denied the right to vote because of their color.
It happened August 6, 1965, when President Lyndon Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act into law. For the first time, the Black vote and people of color were protected.
We need to get as many people to register to vote in this state as possible.
Change would come to big cities and Congress, but progress would prove fragile. "40 years later, a force of nature exposed a nation's indifference to Black suffering. August 29th, 2005, Hurricane Katrina devastated the Gulf Coast, unleashing epic flooding and destroying African-American neighborhoods of New Orleans. More than 1,800 people died. While government couldn't stop the storm, it could have prepared for the damage. It didn't. Chaos followed. Today, Katrina is a synonym for disaster, dysfunction, and disregard for Black lives.
I accept your nomination for presidency of the United States.
On August 28, 2008, exactly 53 years after Emmett Till's murder and 45 years after the March on Washington,
I believe that as hard as it will be, the change we need is coming.
Barack Obama accepted the Democratic nomination for president. His election would mark a high point for Black Americans' voting power.
Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
But the Obama presidency did not solve America's struggle with race.
That was murder!
It revealed how far we have to go.
No justice,
No peace!
In 2012, the killing of Trayvon Martin in Florida sparked protests decrying the disregard for young Black lives in America. Then, 2 years later, on a hot August day, another reckoning in a place called Ferguson. Wesley Lowery reports on the new generation of activists.
It was here on Canfield Drive in Ferguson, Missouri, where on a hot summer Saturday, the body of 18-year-old Michael Brown lay dead in the street for nearly 4 hours. Do you remember the first time you heard the name Michael Brown or the word Ferguson, Missouri?
I was on my Twitter account and I began to see the name trending. And I was like, wow, what is this about? Only to find out there was another Black male killed.
I'd never heard of Ferguson before, but I remember seeing people tweeting about this young man being killed by the police and his body being in the street.
Minutes after stealing cigars from a nearby liquor store, Michael Brown was confronted by police officer Darren Wilson. Words were exchanged, a scuffle ensued, and soon, gunshots rang out.
We need justice!
the story quickly spread.
We don't want another killing in our community.
Another young black man shot and killed by police. And this time, at least according to the early witnesses, he'd been killed with his hands up.
He turned around and he put his hands in the air and he started to get down, but the officer still approached with his weapon drawn and he fired several more shots.
He just wanted to hang out and have a little fun. And he lost his life. And I still don't know why.
Brown's mother, Leslie McSpadden, remembers the heartbreaking moment when she found out her son was gone.
I felt something in my chest, in my gut. And that let me know my son had been hurt, but no one told me he was actually hurt to the point of no return.
No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace.
What followed was days of unrest.
Don't shoot! Don't shoot!
Which was met by a heavy police response.
You must disperse immediately. This is no longer a peaceful protest.
I heard about his death almost immediately after it happened.
What do we want?
And then later that evening went to Ferguson.
What do we want?
Show me what justice looks like.
29-year-old St. Louis native Kayla Reed was a pharmacy technician when Michael Brown was killed. Now, she's a leading activist in the national movement for police accountability.
What was it that kept you out there in the streets for all that time?
It really was just to stand in solidarity with all the people who were there. I was inhaling tear gas while passing out masks. I went from following the person with the bullhorn to being a person with a bullhorn.
The protests continued for months, and decades-long frustrations with the police and criminal justice system began to surface.
People were dealing with over-policing, they were dealing with a bunch of fines and fees, they were dealing with the impacts of cash bail. It highlighted all the things that needed to change.
Generations of Black Americans have complained about being over-policed, yet underserved by law enforcement. Brown's death was just one in a series of police killings that would soon capture the nation's attention. Sherilyn Eiffel is the president of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund.
At the time, Ferguson was among the cluster of the first. Eric Gardner had happened, Michael Brown happens, then Tamir Rice happens.
This cluster, you're right, begins really with Eric Garner, where we have the video of Eric Garner being killed in New York saying, "I can't breathe," 11 times, and we watch it.
I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe.
Every single uprising that took place in the 1960s, they involved the unjust killing by the police of an unarmed black man as the spark.
National Urban League President Mark Morial.
And so there's a direct line between those uprisings of the 60s and the energy we see in the streets today.
It's a mirror of the 1960s, which is the frustration and the outrage that here we are in the 21st century. Still a nation where a man of color, unarmed, is killed by the police and there's no accountability, no prosecution.
After more than 3 months of protest in Ferguson, the country tuned in to find out if Officer Wilson would face criminal charges.
But right now, we are about to hear the grand jury decision in the fatal shooting of Michael Brown.
They determined that no probable cause exists to file any charge against Officer Wilson and returned it
no charges were filed, with prosecutors concluding that Brown's hands were not up when he was killed.
You need to stop throwing objects into police.
Ferguson residents were outraged, and soon, violence erupted in the streets. As President Barack Obama urged for calm.
But I join Michael's parents in asking anyone who protests this decision to do so peacefully.
Ferguson burned.
we should have gone directly to trial to address those individuals.
Derek Johnson is president of the NAACP.
We have to correct our system of handing down justice because it's not a justice system for far too many people in this nation.
Ferguson inspired a new generation of activists. They joined organizers like John Chasanoff, who had long been working to change the criminal justice system.
You've been doing this work for decades in St. Louis, right?
I have. I started in 1999.
Chasanoff has been working on police reform for 20 years, but after Ferguson, he began to see a change.
The protest community was suddenly much younger. There were new people on the streets, and also there was a different attitude.
I do remember hearing that, right? This is not your grandmother's, not your grandfather's civil rights movement. What were people signaling when they talked about that?
This younger generation, they wanted to shake things up in a way that would actually disrupt the current status quo systems.
In the years since Brown's death, activists have mobilized voters in Ferguson to make a change through the ballot box. They elected their first African-American mayor,
of the city of Ferguson, Missouri,
put progressive prosecutors in office, closed a local jail, and earlier this year, a Ferguson protester named Cori Bush won her congressional primary.
What do you think that says about the legacy of the protests in Ferguson?
I think it says the organizing works. I think for us, we've been working. And I think St. Louis is at a point 6 years later where we really want to see progress. We really want to see transformation of these systems. We really want to see change.
Ferguson helped launch a movement for police accountability that has influenced our culture and politics.
Trayvon and Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, Eric Garner were and are this generation's Emmett Tills. And I say Tills because I use it in plural.
The work is far from done, but what happened on Canfield Drive 6 years ago in August helped launch a movement.
Straight ahead, powering up the importance of the African American vote as a force for change in America.